Hello and welcome to another episode of I Remember the Inland Empire. I'm Chuck Street. I'm going to be your host for today's program. We're recording this interview during the Christmas season. So we thought we would take an opportunity to focus on something that's very much a part of Christmas, and that is the sale of Christmas trees, live Christmas trees. So joining us today are two guys who are really involved in this and have been involved in the Christmas tree business, among others, for over 3 decades. So please welcome Mike Kohl and his son, Andrew Kohl, and we're really happy to have you with us. The lot that you've been operating has been at pretty much the same location for over 3 decades, and that's at the corner of Waterman and Hospitality Lane in San Bernardino. Is that correct, Mike?
Yes, that is correct. Absolutely. Yes.
So it's been an interesting business for you. I might tell you that years ago, when I was a teenager, I worked at a Christmas tree lot for 6 weeks, and the guy who owned it had a very robust and successful business selling air conditioning and heating type products. But he loved the opportunity to be at the Christmas tree lot because he had a chance to really negotiate prices and things like that with the customers. He really enjoyed that experience. So now you guys, you both live out of state now, but Mike, you were originally from San Bernardino, right?
Yes, I was from San Bernardino my entire life until we bought a house in Oregon in 1989 and moved in 90 to Silverton, Oregon, Willamette Valley.
But still, it was worth it to you to come back to San Bernardino every year to sell Christmas trees. And then we'll also talk about some of the other, the same lot, you did the pumpkin patch, and then in July, you did the fireworks sales. So how did you get into the Christmas tree sales business?
We were in the used car business. I was a wholesaler, retail used car dealer, and it was very slow back in the early 80s, late 70s in Christmas tree, and I'm sorry, in cars. And so November and December, my brother was teaching at Oregon State University in Corvallis, Oregon, and I'd go up and visit him, and we decided maybe we should try selling some Christmas trees. So we brought Christmas trees down to my car lot in December to sell them because people didn't buy cars in November and December back then. And we kind of started from there and then ended up doing a lot in Fontana with my brother and San Bernardino at the current location. And then as families would, we had a little falling out. They didn't speak for several years. And I took the lot over there, and my brother took one in Fontana, and we kind of went from there. Then I opened up across the street from him, of course, being a good brother, make sure that he'd lose money. So, you know, we started doing that and went from 1 lot to 3 to 7 to 18, and worked our way back down from 18 lots to currently doing 1. So I don't know if I'm going the right direction or the wrong direction.
So 18 lots. I mean, they were all in Southern California.
I was in Southern California from Victorville to Mission Viejo, Palm Springs to San Dimas, and all over in between. It was a lot of fun in those days.
I mean, just to keep your hand on all of those, I mean, to manage that number of locations, that had to have been a challenge.
I was young and probably not real smart. You know? So we didn't have Visa, MasterCard back then. Everything was cash or check. I'm sure I had a lot of partners I didn't know about over the years, being in the cash business. But we managed. It was great. At one time, we brought in 49 semi-loads from Oregon. And then I bought a dozen down here from Holiday Farms. So we did 61 semi-loads at about 42,000 trees.
And you could sell all of those prior to Christmas.
We sold all of those prior to Christmas. And then about 20 years ago, now your Christmas is over by now. We have about 30% of the business left come the 12th of December. But back in the day, I had a tree farmer, Lester Helmig, and Lester and I cut a load a day from the 15th of December till the 21st. We got it here on the 22nd. And we sold that load of 800 trees by Christmas. But I also had a lot of wholesale customers. Besides my 18 lots, we had wholesale high school teams, Rim High School football, churches, youth groups, everything in between. We wholesaled about 10,000 trees out. So it was nothing to bring a truckload of trees and just disperse it. And literally on the 22nd of December, I had everyone's wanting to buy 10, 20, 50 trees, and that load just went away in hours. It was unheard of. No one's ever done that. No, they're all done in Oregon. If you're in Oregon City and you go by Kirk Company down the road from you, you'll see nothing on Gary's Landing. Everyone's shipped out. It's just an early season. Christmas is starting and 4th of July now, I think. You know, it's wow. A changing dynamic of the real tree industry.
So with 18 locations, you obviously have to hire a lot of help, which is pretty seasonal. So that had to be a challenge too, is to find the people who could staff your Christmas tree locations.
You know, we had a few people from Oregon and my wife's nephew Blair and a couple of buddies up there and some friends of my brothers that I got to know. And back then they would have people working out in the forest in the summertime in Oregon, so you wouldn't have forest fires, and they would be marking trees that need to be cut. They'd be removing debris and kind of working in that line of work. But in November, December, there was no work there because of the rain and the snow. So we ended up with a lot of these guys that were contract laborers for different fire companies that were doing abatement to keep the forest from burning. Maybe that's what's happened to the current forest. They quit doing that.
Now, I always wondered when you would bought a Christmas tree, say here in Southern California, how old was the tree from, say, the day it was harvested to when it ended up at the Christmas tree farm? I mean,
if we buy from the small growers like I do or myself, when I had the farm, we'll harvest it and it'll be on a truck within 2 or 3 days. It's 2 days to get it here. I would say it's between 5 and 8 days old. I'm not going to say anything about the chain stores, but I can tell you that a lot of the large companies are cutting trees October 1st for sure, sometimes late September, whether it's rained or not. So we have a fresh tree that's heavy and still full of water that will live through Christmas. Some of the competition is not that way. They have to do 1 million trees, so they have to cut. It takes a long time to get 1 million trees at 800 trees as semi-truck into their marketplace throughout the US and even the world, where they ship on the mats and overseas.
Well, in my experience, sometimes I would get a tree that would easily last through the holidays. I usually would buy the Christmas tree right after Thanksgiving. And it was sort of hit or miss. Sometimes the tree would last all the way to January 1st before it started to get dry and drop its needles. But others, it was starting to go bad, like say a week or so before Christmas. So that maybe that's because I bought it at Home Depot and not at your lot.
Talk about Home Depot or Lowe's or any of the chains selling them, but I can tell you that the individual lots take a lot of care and pride. We get the best of the trees from whether it's a large farmer or small farmer, but the small farmer we can control when they cut. And we control our shipping, and the large farmer, you don't know how long it's shipped. I mean, we've had some trees in the past that I'll buy a load that they're been left over, and after it's been here a few days, you get mold on the trees that were cut too early, and we take them to the dump. So you buy from a small independent grower on an independent lot, and you're in pretty good shape. If you've got a Noble Fir, they're going to last a long time. We have some alpines out of Montana, the Flathead Reservation now. Missoula area, those things will drink water until 4th of July. They won't lose their needles. The grand fir smell wonderful, but they're very perishable. We want to cut them about the 1st of December. They'll be crispy by Christmas no matter what, even if you water them. A Doug fir's in between, it'll last, but not nearly as long as a Noble. Buy a Noble at Thanksgiving, water it, turn your heat down. You're going to be fine till Christmas. In most cases, some genetics, some of them will drink, some won't drink.
Yeah, interesting. It's almost like the tree has a personality, right?
Correct, they do.
For sure. Now let's talk about the location at Waterman and Hospitality Lane. And I remember, being a person who was born and raised in San Bernardino, decades ago, that area was the Tri-City Airport, right? So
that is correct. That is correct. From Waterman to Tippecanoe, and Redlands Boulevard up to the dump was Tri-City Airport, Pinky and Joe Brier.
So let's talk about that, how you ended up there. And again, Pinky Brier was the owner of that land of Tri-City Airport. And then eventually, I guess they closed the airport and then they started to sell off parcels or lease parcels. How did you end up at that location?
I wanted to expand my tree business after this first year. And I noticed this corner living in San Bernardino. My aunt used to fly out of Tri-City Airport when she would be a buyer for Bullocks Wilshire and go overseas. So I knew of Tri-City Airport. I'd been there several times, but it had been demolished. It had been sold to Rancon Development back in, I think it was 83-ish or something like that. So I asked my best friend's father, Phil Castle, who owned Tri-City Airport. He said, well, I'll introduce you. That's Pinky Brier. She flew me when I was 7 years old on her plane. And so I got introduced by the Castles to Pinky, and we went out and removed a lot of debris. There was nothing there. There were no office buildings across the way. There was no Home Depot. From us to Tippecanoe, we were the only person there. She had just sold the Hospitality Lane, had just gone over into that side, and she had sold that to the city. And so there was this 5-acre parcel on the corner, and it took us the better part of a month, I think, to clean it up, and the tumbleweeds and the telephone poles and the foundations from houses and metal. Those were all homes back in the 40s.
Now, Andrew, you grew up around this business.
Yep.
And so you probably started out, when you're 10 years old or something like that, working at the Christmas tree lot?
Somewhere around there, yeah. Yep. I'd go down and help do just whatever I could do. Probably not much at that age.
Yeah, but still, but you were pretty involved in the business, really at a very young age. Well, let's talk about price. I mean, again, when I was a kid, our family I don't know if we ever bought a Christmas tree at your lot. We might have, but it seems like in those days, I mean, you could buy a Christmas tree for what, $15? And the price is really gone up. I mean, what's a Noble, let's say a 6-foot Noble cost in the year 2023?
$120 for a 6'7" Noble.
Okay. And then the Douglas, how about the Douglas?
Douglas is $75, yeah.
Okay. So
and that used to be a Douglas you could buy for, I think I remember us doing for like $35 or something,
Yeah. So let's talk about the other uses of that property. I know the subject today is about Christmas trees, but again, you had that footprint, and so you were able to utilize it, say, for Halloween, right? So you had a pumpkin patch, and then eventually a fireworks stand in July, right? So how did that come to be? You just figured, well, we have this lot, and what can we do to maximize its use, right?
Correct. My father prematurely thought he was dying early, and so I had to come down and do a garage sale for him to get rid of a lot of belongings. And we had a weekend deal. Well, it lasted one day. We got rid of everything, so they sold it all for nothing. And at that time, my Christmas tree supplier of the flock and the stands, and we'll talk about flocking people and cars later, but he called and says, who's this guy in Orange County that's doing 25 of these pumpkin patches from Santa Barbara with these jumping pumpkins? And I said, I don't know what's a pumpkin patch, but I'm going to find out. So I ran around and ended up meeting the gentleman, and we've become really good friends ever since then. His family owned the Camelot mini golf courses in California, so they knew how to extract money out of you for your children. And I called Pinky after meeting him and said, Pinky, that was Sunday night. I would like to sell pumpkins on your lot. Your lot, do whatever you want to do. So I borrowed a bounce house from Chris and ended up selling pumpkins and building. They will come, and pretty soon, it was over the years, 20 years or so before the property had sold in the back. We had carnival rides in there. I had the carnival. We had bounce houses, and it was a lot of joy. The pumpkin patch is a lot of fun. It's not about selling pumpkins, it's about using the pumpkins to sell tickets to do the rides and the entertainment, and watching those kids at the pumpkin patches is an awful lot of fun. I miss the pumpkin patch a lot. A lot of our guys that work for me at the pumpkin patch now go up to Ukaipa to work for Chris at my book.
But it really did. It started as a pumpkin sales operation, but it really kind of morphed into an amusement park almost, right? I remember taking my son when he was a youngster to a pumpkin patch, and we had pony rides, and and nowadays they have those big blow up slides, and I mean it's really something. You know, you could be there may be one alongside the freeway like yours, and you're a mile away, and you see the light at night. Something's happening down there. It's really become you know, something quite extravagant. Well, let's get back to Christmas trees. It seems like there was a trend that really exploded a couple of decades ago about flock trees. So that's a whole process, right? You have to shoot the flocking onto the tree, and obviously that adds to the cost, right?
Correct. We use bags of flock, which would be wood pulp and starch and fire retardant. Put it in a machine that mixes it up with a big blower motor and goes onto with water. We do about 22-23% lately of our Christmas tree sales are flock. It's a pretty big deal.
So you're nationally famous.
Nationally stupid, maybe. I don't know about nationally famous.
Now let's talk again about Pinky Brier, who leased the land to you, the lot, and you became very close to her over the years. And she was quite a woman, an accomplished pilot. I understand that she had logged over 50,000 hours as a pilot and with a charter service. But she also, her sister was Jeane Dixon, right? The astrologer person who was syndicated in newspapers across the country. So Pinky used to ask you to send Christmas trees, right, to Jeane Dixon, and then maybe some of her friends and contacts. And I believe that Jeane Dixon, didn't she live in Washington, D.C.?
Correct. She was a syndicated columnist in Washington, D.C. She had a lot of contacts on both sides of the aisle. And we started out with sending Jeane a wreath and a tree. And then it was a couple wreaths and a couple trees. And pretty soon Pinky would be arguing with her sister saying, Mike is not sending over 10 or 15 trees and 20 wreaths, and you can't have any more. And then people would come over to Jeane's house, various members of Congress, what have you, and to pick up the trees because we couldn't send them to them. I remember Strom Thurmond, Tip O'Neill, some of those names that would go to very good friends of Jeane's that we would send trees and they would end up with them.
But you know, most people, when I've been to homes where there's a real tree, and that's the first thing you notice when you walk into the house is you can smell the live tree. And that's such I have so many memories from my childhood and later, and remembering that scent that came from the Christmas trees. It was really part of the Christmas experience. So it sounds like people are still coming to buy.
People are still coming to buy, but we're losing an awful lot of sales, and we're gonna hang in there, and maybe they'll change the trend. But you know, you grew up with a real tree, and you remember that. But the kids nowadays are the millennials, you know, and if you're growing up with an artificial tree, I grew up with that silver tree with the lights that went around it from my mother and father. But the real tree will be there, but it's going to be tough. You know, it's there was a big oversupply of trees years ago. The depots, all of us, we were buying trees for nothing and selling them for nothing. We were paying, you know, $10, $12 for a tree that I'm paying $50 for. Consequently, a lot of growers went bankrupt, and the big boys just bought them up and bought them up. So now that $12, $15 Noble Fir is $54 to $70 we're paying for. So the growers are winning, but that price point is also sending people artificial. The real tree market, we are sending people artificial trees because we're overpriced, right, honestly.
But the thing that, Mike, you and Andrew have seen is you've seen whole generations of families, they keep coming back, right? Because, you know, the kids remember how pleasant it was to have a live tree in their living room. And then as they get older and have their own kids, they want to share that same experience with their families, right?
Yes, our repeat customers are huge. I would say it's 2/3, 3/4 of our business is repeat customers, and we need to reach out to the newer households and get them in. and hopefully through the industry. We tried a thing years ago, if you remember Willard Scott and what have you, the tree industry hired him to do a real tree promotion when this was an issue, 20 years ago. As an industry, I think we're kind of troubled, I should say. It's not going the right way. And Andrew's done it all for 10 years, most likely 15. I couldn't hire an employee now. I wouldn't know how to schedule anyone. I wouldn't, I'm the old school like you. They have a hard time working for me. The new generations are Andrew's just wonderful with them and gets them all to work really hard and good. But you have to watch your hours, your overtime. Everyone that works for us, there's nothing under the table. They're all payroll. They're all time and a half over 40. The workman's comp deal, it's not the old days. It's not the Wild West of the tree business anymore. You have to be very careful with your employees. And we have wonderful employees that have been with us. We have some Cajon Cowboys baseball guys. We bring them in as tree carryouts and pay the high school team so they could make money for the baseball team. And consequently, these guys, we've got guys, Andrew, that have probably been with us 10 a dozen years that selling trees now that were kids at Cajon High School. It's wonderful.
Well, I guess it's more complicated than people realize. Again, you have all of these, it's a business, but still there's regulations you have to follow. And but anyway, the end result is that people go home with this beautiful tree that smells terrific, and it adds a lot of joy to lives.
Right, and it's not our last year there. Hurrah! We get one more year, so we'll really have to do a push next year, and maybe we can get the newspaper out or someone like that and do a nice article about an almost 4-decade tradition on this corner. It'll be a lot of fun.
Is there anything else that you want to share with us before we conclude?
No, I think it's just we've had a great run. I just thank my wife and my family for taking Christmas and the city of San Bernardino and all of our people here and our clients and the whole ship, everyone. My daughter comes from Arizona. They farm in Arizona and brings her grandkids over and they pick up a real tree. One of the few people in Arizona that has a real tree. And we just want to thank everybody and thank all of San Bernardino for supporting us and the surrounding areas, and thank yourself and thank Pinky Brier and the Brier Trust and the Brier Foundation for allowing us to do it.
Great. Andrew, anything else you wanted to say before we conclude?
No, it's just it's been a good run, and hopefully we can continue giving trees. We have lots of families and stuff that it's really cool just to see the generations of people coming through and stuff, people talking about when they were kids, now they're like my age or younger. They were like, yeah, I used to, come in here as a kid. My parents brought me in. So it's cool to still see that we have a lot of that, a lot of repeat customers.
Well, Mike and Andrew, thanks so much for what you do, because you're definitely adding to the richness of living in the Inland Empire. And I mean that.
And on the last note, yes, we do appreciate that. On the last note, a lot of people think, oh, you're only going to sell Christmas trees or fireworks like we used to in Oregon, but you can't make a living on that. All my friends that even run multiple lots, they have other jobs, do other things. In Oregon, Andrew runs our event rental business, and we do tent, stables, chairs, dance floor, weddings, festivals, what have you. And that keeps our full-time employees busy coming down here in the off season. But the fallacy, everyone thinks, oh, you come down and work a month a year and you go to Hawaii and do something the rest of the time. That's not true. It's a year-round deal for trees and a year-round deal to keep the other businesses going.
Well, thank you, Mike Kohl and Andrew Kohl. This concludes this episode of I Remember the Inland Empire, and this program was produced by Mike Kohnert. Thanks for joining us.